I would like to introduce to you a fellow who, this guy is always on the run. And this year, though, he's decided to make a stop and visit with us here in South Arkansas for just a little while. So if you would, please welcome Mr. Jesse James.
Well, hello Arkansas, how you doing? Good to see you. I love coming down to Arkansas, because when you got a posse or a sheriff from Missouri coming after you, if you dip down into Arkansas, they slow their pace and they just never catch up with you. So I feel right at home in Arkansas. But I can think of a time when we made a little bit of money down in Arkansas. This is over in Hot Springs. This is 1874. And I'm there with my friends, my brother Frank, y'all know Frank, and Cole and John Younger, and a man named Arthur McCoy. And we're looking at one of those fancy new stagecoaches. Oh, Sat 8 people, wheels up to here, shocks, oh, it looked like a dream. But then it dawns on me. And I turn to my brother Frank and I say, you know what? I bet there's not one genuine Southern man riding on that vehicle. You know, because the Southern man, he didn't have any money at that time. And that being such a fancy vehicle, no, I don't think so. But Frank just turns to me and he says, I got $10, says there is. That's all Frank has to say. He doesn't say much. So I take him up on that bet. And so when that stagecoach goes north of town about 5 miles, we ride up on him, put a gun on the driver there, and he stops it, and we pull everybody out. Sure enough, we got the ex-governor of the Dakota Territory, one T.A. Burbank, northern as the day is long. And so I take $800 from the good governor, gold watch, a diamond pin. I start rummaging through what the other passengers have, because most of the rest of them are his entourage. And then, so while I'm looking at it, Frank elbowed. I've forgotten about that bet we had. And so I said, oh yeah, now did any of you gentlemen fight for the Confederacy? And at first they all just look at me and they're all scared, they don't know what to say. And so I turn to Frank with a big smile on my face, and he just moves his chin up. And there's a hand in the back. A fellow by the name of Crump. And he said, yes sir, I did fight for the Confederacy in the war. Well, we gave him back his money. He said, well, we don't want to take from any man from the Confederacy. It was Northerners that made us the outlaws we are today, and we're going to make them pay for it. Made them pay about $2,000 that day. Not too shabby. But all that was a preamble of what we were going to do in a couple weeks. See, we were looking for trails and paths to get through, because we were going up to southeast Missouri to a place called Gadd's Hill. Anybody heard of Gadd's Hill? Well, not too many of you. I understand that. Well, you see, the reason you might know is that the Gadd's Hill in Missouri was named after the Gadd's Hill in Great Britain. It was Charles Dickens' estate, and he had highwaymen running through there all the time. But there was another reason, and I didn't know this. My brother Frank, he reads that Shakespeare. Oh, he reads all those plays. I'm a Bible reading man myself. But he told me that in one of Shakespeare's plays, Henry IV, Part 1, there's a fellow named Falstaff robs the pilgrims at Gadd's Hill. And then Prince Hal, who would turn into King Henry, he robs Falstaff. Now, Shakespeare called that robbing the robbers. Ooh, well, I like the sound of that. Robbing the robbers, yeah, because that's what we were going to do. We were going to rob from the trains there in Gadd's Hill. So, when we get over to Gadd's Hill, there's not much to speak of there. There's about 15 people in the whole town, easy to round up. We brought them over to that train platform there. And see, those trains in Missouri, they've been robbing from the citizens since the Civil War was over. Because the citizens of Missouri, they paid triple the taxes of those in Iowa or Illinois, all because of the trains. Because they said that they could put up public money for private industry, which meant that the towns had to put up local bonds. And the trains would sometimes lay down the track and put up a platform, and sometimes they would just take the money and run. So they were robbing from the citizens even more than the outlaws. See, outlaws would take thousands, trains would take millions. So we go down to Gadd's Hill, we're gonna take it back. So we take these 15 citizens, put them by the platform. This is a cold day in January, so we light a little bonfire. Wait for that train to show up. And sure enough, a little after 5 o'clock, that number 7 train on the Iron Mountain Railroad comes down the track. And it was called the Little Rock Express. So guess where it was going? Down to Arkansas there. Now, if you wanted a train to stop unexpectedly in those days, you raised a red flag or a red lantern. And that meant that there was some danger on the tracks, maybe a loose rail or, something was blocking its path. But in this case, the danger was us. So we raised that red flag, and they stopped. I put a gun on that conductor and the engineer, pulled them on out. We took them back to the passenger car. And we said, now if everyone behaves themselves, we won't have to kill this conductor. You can be on your way when we're done. And I kept everybody in line. So we took that conductor and engineer, put them on the platform. We had Arthur McCoy and John Younger guarding them. And Cole and Frank are going through the passenger car there. And Cole's trading hats with people, and Frank's quoting Shakespeare, confusing everybody. But I mean business. I want to go back to that mail baggage car. So I find myself that Adams Express messenger, and I pull him on back. We get back there, I don't mess around. I say, any man damn fool enough not to open a safe or a vault when he's got a gun on him, well, he deserves to die. So what you gonna do? Well, that Adams Express messenger didn't want to die that day. So we opened up that safe, and I started looking through these mail parcels. See, they're starting to trade money through the country this way. I find one that's got $4,000 in it. Oh, so I open a few more, get a few more $100. Yeah. Then we go back to the passenger car, and I slip a note to one of the passengers there. A little publicity. I say, why don't you telegram that up to the St. Louis Dispatch, the newspaper up there. And it said that this was the most daring robbery on record. The number 7 train on the Iron Mountain Railroad was robbed by 5 heavily armed men of blank amount of dollars. Let them fill in the blank. About $6,000. And we said how we did it, raising the red flag, and then we ended it with a flourish saying, this certainly is a hell of a lot of excitement in this part of the country. And that right there in Gads Hill was the first peacetime train robbery in Missouri history. And who was there? Jesse James. Yeah. So the whole thing only took 40 minutes. And then they get a posse trying to chase after us, and what do? We did down into Arkansas. Boy, they just never caught up with us once we got down into Arkansas. We go right across the Ozarks over to Bentonville, and then we cut up north, all the way up to northwest Missouri in Clay County, where I was born and raised. Now, by this time, everybody kind of knew who Jesse James was. That word was getting around. But believe it or not, there was a time in American history when nobody knew who Jesse James was. You got to go all the way back to the Civil War and before that. So I was born in 1847 in Clay County, and that was known as Little Dixie. A lot of people from Kentucky and Tennessee were going on up there migrating because the rolling hills reminded them of home, but the land was cheap. And my daddy, Robert Sally James, well, he's a hemp farmer and a Baptist preacher. He had about 300 people in his congregation at the New Hope Baptist Church. But one of my first memories as a child was hanging on to his leg. And I'm just pleading with him, and just tears in my eyes and saying, Daddy, please don't go. And where's he going? He's going out west with the gold rush. Some of the folks were going out there, he wanted to make a little fortune, which I can appreciate, but he's leaving my mama behind. And 3 kids, my brother Frank, my sister Susan, and me. And I'm just hanging on to him, saying, please don't go. And they said my tears almost made him stay. But he looked down at me and said, son, a promise is a promise. And he went out west with the gold rush, made it all the way to California, and promptly died in a place called Hangtown of fever. So I never really knew my daddy. But don't feel too bad for me, because I was raised by my mama, Zerelda. And she was as tough as any 3 men you've ever met. When she laughed, the whole house shook. She could dance up a storm, she could ride a horse better than most men, and she was not afraid of the devil himself. That was my mama. And she raised us the Southern way. I mean, we were farmers. First it was hemp, and then it was tobacco and cotton. We made most of our money from that tobacco. And so when the Civil War came around, there was no question. We were going to fight for the South. It was just the way we grew up. We knew which side we were on. Only problem was I was 14 years old when that war started. Ain't no army on either side gonna take a 14-year-old boy. But my brother Frank was 18, and he joined one of those bushwhacker groups. Now, I should probably explain that. See, there were two sides. They had gangs in northwest Missouri. The Confederate Army never made it up that far. But about 10 years before, when Kansas was becoming a state, they had what they called popular sovereignty, which meant they were going to vote on whether they were going to have slavery over there or not. But that meant a whole mess of people went to Kansas trying to influence the decisions. You had John Brown and Jim Lane, and they would start these gangs. So if you were in an abolitionist gang, they called you a jayhawker. And if you were in one of the slavery gangs, they called you a bushwhacker. So these gangs were still around when the Civil War was there. Frank joined one of those. Now we had Union troops in the area. They heard about Frank joining the bushwhacker group. He came to the Samuels farm. Now, let me tell you, my mama, after my daddy died, she remarried again to a man named Sims. But that didn't last very long. He fell off a horse and died. My mama could ride a horse better than he could. And then she married again to a man named Dr. Reuben Samuels. Because when she found out when Mr. Sims died that she didn't get any of his property because she was just a woman and a widow. So she married again to Dr. Reuben Samuels. She had a prenuptial agreement. That's how smart my mama is. And she said that if that marriage dissolved for any reason, that she would get the slaves and all the property. Well, I don't know if it was that prenuptial agreement, but they stayed married. So maybe that's a good idea. So, now that we got Frank with all these bushwhackers, they're coming to the Samuels farm. That's what they knew it from then on. Now, these Union troops came in, and I'm plowing in the fields there. And they say, hey, where's your brother Frank? Well, I don't know where Frank is. He comes and goes as he pleases. Well, they didn't like that answer. And they started to beat on me. They beat me till I was face down within a breath of my life. Then they went up to the house. My stepfather's on the porch. They asked him the same question. Where's your boy Frank? Well, he doesn't know where Frank is either. They string him up in one of our trees, leave him hanging there for about 30 seconds, cut him down, ask him the question again. Well, he doesn't know a better answer. So he doesn't know where they are. So they string him up again. They string him up 3 times. Finally, my mama came out and chased those boys away. Now, they took my stepfather with them. She thought she'd never see him again, but they just threw him in jail, made him walk home a couple days later. Now, I was ready to fight for the Confederacy in the South. But after that day, I was ready to kill Union troops, each and every one of them. Now, when I turned 16, I joined those bushwhacker groups. First under a man named Fletch Taylor, but he got shot in his arm, had to give it up. Then, I was in a gang under Bloody Bill Anderson. Now, if you don't know who Bloody Bill Anderson is, he lives up to his name. Not only would he kill you, he'd scalp you like an Indian. Put his scalps all over his horses. Yeah. There was a Union general in Kansas City, knew about him, put out an order called General Order Number 10. Said, any Southern sympathizer, man, woman, or child will be arrested on sight. And one of the first families he went to was Bloody Bill's family, because they were very outspoken about the war. He put his sisters and his cousins in prison, a makeshift prison in Kansas City. I say makeshift prison because the thing collapsed, killing his sisters and his cousins. Oh, you thought he was wild before that. He was downright maniacal after that. He went to a town called Centralia, took the whole town over. We found ourselves a big old keg of whiskey. We went hog wild in that town, let me tell you. And then the train came in. It had 25 Union soldiers on that, all on a furlough. Bloody Bill lined them all up, shot them all dead, save one, just so he could tell the tale. Well, they caught up with Bloody Bill up in Ray County. Yeah, they ambushed him. And then they drug his dead body all over town there in Richmond, took pictures of it. It was that kind of war. And that's what kept happening during the war. My leaders would get shot, injured, or killed. And then I kept learning how this violence was influencing people. I was getting my training as an outlaw. I didn't even know it. And eventually, that war ended. And the Union won. As I like to say, there were too damn many of them. Too many resources, too much ammunition. Southern man had pride. He had spirit. But He ran out of bullets. So it just didn't go his way. But I'm an 18-year-old boy now. I still got a lot of fight in me. I don't want this new government telling me what to do. Keeping the southern man down, wouldn't let him vote, hard to make a living. And then I came up with an idea. And on February 13th, 1866, a dozen horsemen ride into Liberty, Missouri. They line up on Franklin Street, right by the Clay County Savings Association. And they're all wearing Union blues. But you see, Union soldiers got paid after the war. They got a pension. Southern soldiers, bushwhackers, didn't get paid anything. So we figured we'd take a little withdrawal from that bank. So 2 of those horsemen got off their horses and went into the bank. Nobody knows for sure who they were, and nobody can prove anything. But when I went into that bank with Archie Clement, my good friend from the war, I put down a $10 note. I said I'd like that exchanged. Well, there were 2 men in the bank at that time, Greenup Bird and his son William. William walks up to the counter, looks at that $10 note, looks at me, looks at that $10 note again. When he looks back at me, I got a gun on him. And I say, we intend to rob this bank of all its money. You fill up these sacks and you be damn quick about it. Now, I didn't swear much before the war. I mean, my mom made sure of that, but let me tell you, you got a little profanity when you got a gun on somebody, they know you mean business. So they start filling up those sacks with gold and greenbacks and government bonds. I should tell you something about money in those days. Nobody had any. I mean, before the war, people had a couple gold pieces, but they would hoard them. It was like little treasures. Paper money, no one trusted that. Confederate money, are you kidding me? Come on. Yeah, and if it was any other kind of money, they thought it was counterfeit. So if we wanted to do something back then, we'd bring out tobacco into town. We would just trade it for what we needed, the food, tools, what have you. They called it the barter system. But now after the war, they wanted to use these greenbacks. You bring in your crops, and they give you greenbacks, green pieces of paper that we're supposed to use to buy everything. Well, if that's going to be the new way with this new government, we're going to take those greenbacks just as quick as we'll take the gold. So when Greenup Bird and his son stuffed those sacks full, I pushed them into the vault there. And I said, all birds should be caged. I don't want to hear a peep out of either of you. If I do, I'm coming back with guns a-blazing. Well, when we left that bank, Greenup really didn't take that advice at all. He went right to the window and yelled out, they're robbing the bank! They're robbing the bank! Well, there's a man on the street, and he's a boy, really, 19-year-old George Wymore. He repeats that alarm, they're robbing the bank! Now, I told you, only 2 of us went inside. That meant there were 10 on the street, standing guard. So, when George Wymore yells out, they're robbing the bank! Well, one of those soldiers lined him up. 1 shot. No more George Wymore. And we went out of town whooping and hollering, yeehaw! Feeling like we just won a battle in the Civil War. We counted up that money. It was $58,000 worth. And that right there in Liberty, Missouri, was the first peacetime daylight bank robbery in American history. And who was there? Jesse James. That's right. Now, do you think they knew who Jesse James was after that? No, they still didn't know who I was. They wouldn't find out about me for another 3 years when my brother Frank and I went up to Gallatin, Missouri. Now, we were going to rob the bank up there, but we were out there for some revenge as well, because we were looking for one Samuel P. Cox. Who's Samuel P. Cox? He's the man who killed Bloody Bill Anderson in the war. And they said he worked at the bank up there. So, we go up there to the Daviess County Savings Association, and I walk to the bank, and I put down a $100 government bond. I said, I like that exchanged. Well, the teller comes up, looks at it, and says, well, those old government bonds aren't worth, what they're printed on. Maybe it's worth $20 or $30. You see what the bank does? You see, they will say, oh, no, we can't give you face value for these things. That's how they rob you, Outlaws take your money straight out, just take it away from you. The bank, they take some of your money. They'll give you a mortgage, and then they'll foreclose on you. That's business. That's the American way. But outlaws, no, you gotta hang them. So, we go in there, And I'm arguing over what that's really worth. And then Frank comes in, sees what we're doing, and he says, you know what? I will pay dollar for that government bond, as long as you write me a receipt, Mr. Teller. Well, Teller has no problem with that. You know, it doesn't cost him any money. Might make something in the transaction. So he goes off and writes the receipt, and I turn to Frank. And he looks at me and just nods. That means that's Samuel P. Cox. So when he comes back, I don't waste time. He doesn't get another breath. One in the heart, one in the head. No more Samuel P. Cox. So we jump over, we grab as much money as we can, a few $100s, and we jump out of that bank. Now people are starting to get wise to these bank robbers. Then they come out, and some of them start cracking their rifles. So Frank hops on his horse, I hop on my bay mare Kate, and we start riding through the center of town. We're whooping and hollering, yeehaw! We kill Samuel P. Cox! We kill Samuel P. Cox! But those rifle cracks, they startle my bay mare Kate. She bucks me up, and I get my foot stuck in the stirrup, and now I'm getting dragged down the center of town, and I'm going, oh, Frank, help me! You gotta come back and get me! Frank's gotta whip around. He slows down my bay mare Kate, and he grabs me. I hop on his horse. Now we're out of town, whooping and hollering. We kill Samuel P. Cox, the man who killed Bloody Bill Anderson, and we get our names in the paper. They say the James brothers, bloodthirsty bushwhackers from the war, and notably desperate men. Ooh, I like the sound of that. And they say we are now wanted for the murder of Captain John Sheets, who they say resembled Samuel P. Cox. Well, be careful on who you look like, because you just might suffer their fate. As for Samuel P. Cox, he got wind of what we were trying to do, sold all his property, hightailed it out to California, never to be heard from again. So that's as good as a revenge as we could do. But the main thing that happened is that we got our names in the paper, and that caught the attention of one John Newman Edwards in Kansas City. Wrote for the Kansas City Times, but he was an old Confederate from the war. He rode with Joe Shelby. And those boys, they didn't even surrender at the end of the war. They just headed down to Mexico. That's how you get a lot of Confederates heading out west. But he eventually came back, and he was looking for a hero for the Southern man. And he heard about these James brothers trying to settle old scores. Well, he came up and interviewed us and wrote a piece called The Chivalry of Crime. Described Frank and I, and he said that I always had a smile on my face, was laughing, devil may care. I knew there was a price on my head. Didn't bother me. I'll tell you the whys and wherefores about it. But Frank didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He knew about the price on his head, and it chafed him, bothered him to no end. And that's how Frank got known as that silent, cold-blooded killer. And I got known as the leader of the gang. I'm the little brother. Well, I'll take it, though. I'll be the leader if you want me to be. And this John Newman Edwards, he compared us to the great names of old Europe. King Arthur, Napoleon, Alexander the Great. Yeah, I like that. But there was one name stood out more than all the others, just rang true in America. That was Robin Hood. Jesse James is the American Robin Hood. And what did Robin Hood do? He robbed from the rich, gave to the poor. Now, everybody wants to know, do you really rob from the rich and give to the poor? Well, we rob from banks and trains, so yeah, we're definitely robbing from the rich. Those are the ones making millions after the war. Now, did we give to the poor? Well, let me put it to you this way. If you rob from a bank, where are you going to put your money? In another bank? No, you're going to spend it. And we bought everything. We bought fine horses, good saddles, good whiskey. We spread that money around, all right? But we didn't go looking for the poor, saying, oh, you a poor person? Well, here's some money. There you go. But I can think of a time we did do something very much like Robin Hood. And this is down in the Ozarks now. Frank and I are running through there. And you don't always have a restaurant or a place to eat when you're riding on through. So we would stop at people's houses. We stopped at this one place, little farm, just a shack really on it. Knocked on the door, and there's just this little old lady there. Take off my hat. I'll say, ma'am, we've been riding all morning. Sure getting hungry, and we'd appreciate it if you cook us up a meal. We'd be happy to pay for it now. Well, she just looked at us, gave us a big sigh, and she said, well, I don't have very much, but what I do have, I'll share with you. Just wait on the lawn, I'll cook it up. And so that's what we did. And she came out with some biscuits and some pork fat. And we started eating it up there. We noticed that she's got tears in her eyes. We said, "Ma'am, we're not here to frighten you. We'll eat our meal and we'll be on our way." She said, "Well, it's not that. It's that, her husband died recently, and, well, seeing men on the farm again, that just brought back those old memories. We can appreciate that because, we were raised by our mama on a farm." She said, "The other thing is, the tax man's coming today. The mortgage is due. $800. She doesn't have it." So I look at Frank. Frank looks at me. We don't have to say anything. We're brothers. Some sort of telepathy or something. And I say, "Ma'am, because you remind me of my mama, I'm going to loan you that $800. And tears of joy start bursting out of her. She's like, "Oh, thank you. I can't believe it. Thank you so much." And I said, "Well, now, it's all good, well and good. If we come back through and you have the money, you can give it to us. But what you need to do is make sure everything is done business-like. When he comes, you give him that money, you write him a receipt. Make sure he writes you one. You exchange that way everybody knows it's business-like." She agrees to do that. So Frank and I finish our meal, give her that $800, and we go on our way. Well, tax man does come later that day, ready to foreclose on that farm. She gives him that $800. He's very shocked, but very happy to take it. And they do everything businesslike, exchanging receipts. And he goes on his way, feeling pretty good about himself. Well, he gets a couple miles up the road. A couple highwaymen jump out of the forest, rob him of that $800 and everything else he has. Kicks him off his horse, makes him ride back to town all by himself. So I guess there was a Robin Hood hiding in the forest down in the Ozarks here. But I tell you, the more popular you get, you make some enemies. And those trains, they didn't take too kindly from us taking from them. They hired the Pinkerton Detective Agency out of Chicago, Illinois, run by Alan Pinkerton. Well, he set up a shop in Kansas City just to come after the James brothers and the Younger brothers. Well, the first guy they sent after us, I don't know if he was arrogant or just a plain fool, but his name was John W. Witcher. And he got off the train in Liberty. First thing he did was go to the bank, put down a $50 security deposit, wanted to talk to the bank president, D.J. Atkins. Well, the bank president talks to him. He tells him exactly what he's going to do. He's going to go up to the Samuels farm, pose as a laborer, and when he can get the drop on Jesse James, he's going to take him out. See, they called themselves detectives, but they were really spies and bounty hunters. Yeah. Well, the bank president doesn't want anything to do with this. I mean, he doesn't like the James brothers, but he doesn't want to be on our bad side either. And he tries to dissuade him, brings in the ex-sheriff of Clay County, one Oliver Moss. And Oliver Moss says the same thing. He says, "Don't go up to the Samuels farm. For one thing, the James brothers don't live there anymore. And another thing, the mama will kill you just as quick as the boys will." Do you think he listened to him? No, he just went right on his way. Well, my mama would have shot him, but the bank president actually tipped us off he was coming because he didn't want to be on our bad side. So we were waiting for him. It's myself, I was there with Jim Anderson, I was Bloody Bill's brother, and Arthur McCoy from Gad's Hill. And this John W. Witcher, he comes up, gives us an alias, David or Tom or something. And he says, "Well, I'm just a laborer and a farmer down on my luck. I'm just looking for some work." I said, "Oh, you're a farmer, huh? Well, let me see those hands." Shows me his hands. Slick and smooth like a city boy's. I know what farmer hands look like. I plowed those fields. They're rough. They're tough. They're cut up. Salt of the earth kind of hands, not this smooth slickness. Well, so we bind and gag that boy. Turns out he's got his initials tattooed on his wrist. JWW right there. Don't give somebody an alias if you got your initials tattooed on you. He's also carrying a pistol. It said PGG on it, Pinkerton Government Guard. Just give yourself away, why don't you? Farmers don't carry pistols. Pistols are for killing people. You carry a shotgun if you're a farmer to scare off that stuff from your livestock. Well, I didn't want to kill him on my mama's farm. So we went over to the river and paid the ferryman to take us across. Well, the ferryman looks at us. And I say, "Hey, that ain't nothing but a horse thief, and he's going to get what's coming to him." And what he got was a shot in the shoulder, shot in the neck, and a shot right between the eyes. Guess who had the best shot? Jesse James did, that's right. So we laid down the gauntlet on those detectives. They knew we were going to come after them if they were going to come after us. But even as things were getting hot, I'm about 27 years old now. I'm going to settle down a little bit, start myself a family. And there was only one woman after my heart. Now, I didn't tell you this, but at the end of the Civil War, we all had to go down to Lexington, Missouri to surrender, officially. And on the way there, we ran into the 3rd Cavalry of the Wisconsin, Northern boys. And we started jawing at each other, and then we started shooting at each other. One of them plugs me right in my right lung. Oh, I thought I was going to die right then and there. First casualty after the Civil War. I spent the night in the river just trying to cool down. And they caught me down to Lexington, I surrendered, and they caught me back to Kansas City. I stayed with my uncle's family, the Mims. Well, my cousin there was named Zerelda, named after my mama. And she's the one that nursed me back to health. And we started ourselves a secret 9-year courtship, engaged the whole time. Shh. Well, when it was time to come clean and talk to my uncle about it, he was none too happy. Not just that we were cousins, you see, but I was the outlaw Jesse James. Nobody wants to marry off their daughter to some outlaw. So I had to talk to him, saying half of those half-truths they say about me are outright lies. So I just kept going, and I can talk up a storm if I have to. And I tell you, he finally gave in, and he was a Methodist preacher, so he actually put us together and married us off in that ceremony. But Frank didn't have such good luck. Well, he found his soulmate was a schoolmarm named Ann Ralston. And Frank's just a little bookworm at heart. And they clicked pretty well. The only problem was she was the daughter of an Irish immigrant. No way that he was going to have his daughter marrying an outlaw named Frank James. Well, so she knew that too. She just left a note with her family and said, "I've gotten married and headed out west." Frank just eloped. Well, he did come back later, try to smooth things over with that daddy, but he wasn't having it. Demanded his daughter back and called Frank every name in the book. But Frank kept his cool and his guns at his side. I tell you though, that reminds me. Does anybody know the difference between an outlaw and an in-law? Anybody know the difference between an outlaw and an in-law? See, outlaws are wanted. Huh? Yeah? I thought it was funny when I heard it. Oh, Arkansas's got a sense of humor. Yeah. Well, after we both got married, we took both couples, we went down to Texas, visited my sister Susan, and also one Miss Myra Maybelle Shirley. Now, if you don't know her, later in life, she became known as Belle Starr. Yeah, we grew up as kids together. Yeah, she was down in Carthage. We would go down to her general store every now and again. Good friend of the family. And she was shacked up with a fella named Jim Reed down there. He was an old bushwhacker from Clay County. And see, Jim Reed, on his deathbed, he confessed to every crime that Jesse James ever committed. So if there's any Northerners out there thinking that, oh, we got this Jesse James here, maybe we should arrest him. What you need to do is go over to Texas, visit Jim Reed's grave, tell him he's under arrest. Tell him I said hi while you're at it. I tell you, these detectives, they heard that I got married. It didn't stop us from robbing trains or banks. We just kept on going. They couldn't touch us. And that Alan Pinkerton, boy, he just couldn't believe it. He could not get us. So he came up with a plan. A diabolical plan. A plan I don't even know if an outlaw would do. He was going to go burn down my mama's house. And on a cold night in January 1875, a train stopped right outside of Liberty. 8 men jump out. There's snow on the ground. They run through it. Go to the Samuels farm. Now, my mama's got that house all boarded up like a fortress. It's wintertime for one thing, but she knows detectives are snooping around. And they go up to the house and bang on that door and say, "Bring out Jesse James." Well, I never slept there anymore. I was there for dinner a lot, but I wasn't there that night. That's what my mama told me. Also told them where to stick it. Well, that didn't go too well, because they busted one of those wooden planks in the window and they threw in what they called a Greek fireball. Big piece of metal with combustible liquid inside. My mama doesn't know what that is. She tries to scoop it up with a blanket. It's too heavy for her. My stepfather, he grabs a shovel, picks it up, he gets it, sees that it's hot, he throws it in the fire. He doesn't know what it is. Well, it gets hotter and hotter, and then it explodes. Metal, shrapnel going everywhere. Piece hits my stepdaddy in his head, knocks him out cold. He didn't get the worst of it. My mama gets a piece, hits her right on her wrist, shatters her arm. She had to have her arm amputated that night. No anesthesia. My mama didn't cry a lick about that, because she didn't get the worst of it. My little brother, 13-year-old Archie Samuels, baby of the family. He gets a piece of metal, hits him in his gut. It is so hot, it sears down through his bowels and kills him. My mama cried about that one. That was her baby. That's what those detectives do. Bounty hunters. They can't touch me. You want to come after Jesse James, you come after me. You pull your guns, I'll pull mine. We'll see who's standing. You don't go after someone's family. John Newman Edwards gets word of that. Puts it in the paper, it goes all around the country. Calls them what those detectives really are. Arsonists. Murderers. Even Northerners sick to their stomach. And what is going on? The trains hired these people. The United States government hires these people. And that's what they do. And they'll come after you. They'll come after your kin. I said, that's enough. And those detectives had to back off. They could never come and get Jesse James again. So we beat him. At a heavy price. Maimed my mama. Killed my kid. But the name Jesse James, it just keeps getting bigger. They can't touch me. I am a living legend now. Every bank that gets robbed west of the Mississippi, Jesse James did it. A train gets robbed, Jesse James did it. Banks will close early because Jesse James robs in the afternoon. They're just going all over the place. They're writing novels about me. They got dime novels in Europe talking about Jesse James. So I gotta come up with bigger plans. Everything's gotta have a purpose. It's gotta mean something. It's gotta be more than a bank robbery. And that's where I came up with Northfield, Minnesota. Why would I go up to Northfield, Minnesota? I've never been to Minnesota. What's up there? Well, there's a fella named Delbert Ames up there. Who's Delbert Ames? Well, just a Union Army general from the war from Massachusetts. Also the ex-governor of Mississippi. Let me say that again. He was a Union Army general from Massachusetts, but also the ex-governor of Mississippi. How do you think the people of Mississippi felt about having a governor from Massachusetts? It's like saying the governor of Arkansas is from New Hampshire. Doesn't make any sense. But that's what they did after the war. Southern man couldn't vote. They basically just put people in charge down there. Well, when those Mississippi folks finally got some political power again, brought up charges on the Delbert Ames, well, he didn't even stick around. He hightailed it back to Massachusetts and then over to Northfield, Minnesota. His family had a flour mill there. Now, they say he might have $75,000 in that bank. So we figured we might go up there and take a little withdrawal. Only problem is, I've never been up there. I don't know the territory. We found a fella who did grow up there, was living down in Clay County. His name was Bill Chadwell. So we found ourselves a guide. And a couple of the youngers wanted in on this, Jim and Bob. And Bob's about ready to get married, wants one final score. Now, my brother Frank, of course, he's coming, but Cole had enough of him. He thought I was getting a little too big for my britches, believing my publicity and my press just a little too much. But since his brothers were going, well, he had no choice, really. But he would always remind me, he said, you boys plan this, I'm just going along with you. Well, then we brought up Clell Miller, who we had known since we were kids, and a fellow named Charlie Pitts, who knew the youngers, and Lee Summit. So that made 8 of us. And we go up to Northfield, and we stick out like a sore thumb. We look like Southern chivalry up there. We got fine horses, fine saddles, Smith & Wessons on our side. Yeah. So we had to say we were cattle prospectors looking to buy in. And we scout out the neighborhood. We talked to farmers up there. I talked to one farmer and I said, well, tell me about these people in Northfield. Are they mild-mannered? Are they law-abiding? And the farmer looked at me and said, yeah, I reckon so. And I said, well, the way you make it sound, a few men, they're heavily armed, could come in and take over the whole town. The farmer looks at me and says, yeah, I reckon so. You know, farmers are simple folk, but boy, they'll tell you the truth. And then I go to the general store, talk to the owner there, A.R. Manning. Say, well, you got any rifles for sale? He said, no, I don't sell rifles, just shotguns. Well, that makes us feel better, you know. Shotgun will sting you, but it's not really good at a distance. Rifles, they can pick you off from anywhere. So we're feeling pretty good about it. We take a vote. We agree to rob the bank, except for Cole. He still didn't want to do it. So we agree he doesn't have to go in the bank. I was going to go in with Frank and Charlie Pitts. Cole would be on right outside for crowd control, he and Clell Miller. And then the other three would be by the bridge if there's any trouble. Now, what I didn't tell Cole was the morning of the robbery, which was September 7th, 1876. The three of us going in the bank, we split ourselves a quart of whiskey. Little liquid courage, you know, for the job. Now, if Cole had found out about that, he would have called off the robbery because he didn't drink, didn't trust people that did. So we kept that a secret from him. So I went into that bank ready to go. I pull out my guns and I say, we intend to rob this bank of all its money. And if you say hello, I'll blow your damn brains out. Well, there's a tall, thin fella named Joseph Haywood there. And he just looks at me and he says, well, I'm not the cashier. And there's a time lock on that vault. I can't open it. It just makes me a little fuming. I turn to the next man and I say, you're the cashier. A fella by the name of Bunker. Well, he says he's not the cashier either. There's no cashier in Northfield, the First National Bank of Northfield, and there is no cashier. I got liquid in my head. I got that whiskey friend, and I say, oh, and let me tell you something right now. You're gonna open that safe for me. And he starts screaming, murder, murder, murder. And Bunker runs out the back door. Charlie Pitts stumbles after him, fires off a shot, hits him in his shoulder, but it's not a good shot. He keeps on running. Well, that's when we realize there's shots on the street. There's already shots on the street. What just happened? Well, it turns out those Minnesota folks are pretty nosy. I tell you, merchant walked across the street, started peeking. Cole grabbed him by the cuff and said, get out of here, damn you. And that was clearing the streets, which is what we wanted. Only problem was, they all went to a secure location. And this is September in Minnesota. That's hunting season. Everybody had a loaded shotgun. And they start firing at Cole and Clell. That brings in the fellas off from the bridge. And boy, let me tell you, we start hearing rifle shots. Turns out that the owner of that general store, that A.R. Manning, he only sold shotguns, but he had a rifle himself. And oh, he was a killer shot with it. He hit Clell Miller right in his hip, dropped him. Hit his horse, killed his horse instantly. He turned around, the fellas coming in from the bridge, he took a shot, hit Bill Chadwell right in the chest. Gone, our guy, dead. And that's when Cole, he runs to the bank, kicks in the door, and yells out, the game is up, boys. We're beaten. Now, I've known Cole all my life. I know him as a kid, I knew him during the war. Trained in bank robberies, I'd never heard him say that. We're beaten. So I look at this Haywood, and I give him one more chance. I say, any man damn fool enough not to open a safe or a vault when he's got a gun on him, he deserves to die. So what you gonna do? He didn't do nothing. So I squeezed the trigger. No more Joseph Haywood. I jump onto that street, and we're getting peppered from all over. Frank gets shot in his foot, Jim gets shot in his shoulder, Cole gets shot in his hip. We gotta ride on out of there. Clell Miller's dead on the street, Bill Chadwell's dead on the street, and Bob Younger gets shot in his elbow. Just leaving it hanging. Blood is just coming out of him. He's bleeding out, and we're getting out of town, and we only took about $25 worth of nickels out of that bank. Oh, and then it starts to rain. That cold fall Minnesota rain. We got no money. We got no food. Bob's bleeding out, and we're just crawling through Minnesota. We can go about 10 miles in 7 days. And I look at Cole. I know we can't take Bob any further. And I tell him, it's time to part ways. Because I know he's not going to leave his kin. And Cole agrees. So Frank and I go on our way. Charlie Pitts, he stays with the youngest because he knows them. And Frank and I, we start the most daring escape in all our lives. And we used all the old tricks. We're stealing horses, using grain sacks for saddles, ropes for bits. We steal blind horses. They didn't even know where they were going. We found the doctor, help with Frank's foot. I tell you, we just crawled to the Dakota Territory, started zigzagging our way down. Nebraska, Iowa, Nebraska, finally to Sioux City. The Missouri River turns south there. I was never so happy to see that big muddy river in all my life. We drift down, make it all the way to Missouri and Clay County. 500 miles we did in a week. Then we find out the news. A posse caught up with the youngers. They got in a shootout. Charlie Pitts got killed. The youngers, well, they surrendered. Pled guilty to the bank robbery. Life imprisonment. Bob died of his wounds soon after. And when we got back to Clay County, Frank just looked at me. I knew. He didn't want to rob banks anymore. We had to leave Clay County. We went down to Nashville, took our families down there. Frank starts farming, like we did when we were kids. He liked it. I bought myself a racehorse, Red Fox. Rode him at the track. I'd win races, I'd throw races, anything to make a buck. The track has a way of taking as much as it gives you. I try poker. I got too many tells. Everybody knows my hands. They take my money. And that's when I realized I'm only good at one thing. My whole adult life was training to be an outlaw and a bandit. I can't go clean. But I gotta get myself a new gang. Youngers are gone. Frank doesn't want to do it. And all these old Confederates, they're dead, old, assimilated, whatever. So I gotta start with kids. 18-year-olds, like when I started. But they're not like us. They're not the Confederates. They didn't have that loyalty to each other. They'd turn on each other over a woman. They'd flash their money when they got it. I bet they'd turn me in if they could. There's a $5,000 reward on me in Missouri. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with my new gang. But I know I can shake up this country once or twice more, I can tell you. But no matter what happens, I will tell you this, Arkansas, that tonight, right here in Smackover, you met the greatest bank and train robber in American history. And his name was?
Jesse James.
Jesse James. Thank y'all for coming out here tonight. It was a wonderful crowd. You've been great. Thank you very much.
You're good. That's good.
Mr. James, would you entertain a couple of questions?
I will entertain a few questions.
Hey, if you'll hold your hand up, we'll get a mic to you. Questions? Questions? We have one back in the back, Rhonda.
Was Quantrell, guy you rode with, was he an outlaw or was he a gentleman?
He was both. But mostly an outlaw. Now, if you don't know about Quantrell, he was an old bushwhacker himself. Now, he actually grew up in Kansas, but he got beaten up by a bunch of Jayhawkers and switched side to be a bushwhacker. What he was known for was going over to Lawrence and burning down the town, basically. Killed about 200 people. My brother Frank was with him when he did that. Now, I was in the camp there, cleaning guns, actually. They wouldn't let me go because I still wasn't old enough. And actually, while I was cleaning guns, it actually fired off. I blew off the tip of one of my fingers there. So they didn't let me ride with him. But Quantrell had one of the greatest massacres that ever happened that year. So I would say Quantrell, well, it really depends on who you talk to. But we always looked up to him. But he was one of those that got shot right at the end of the Civil War down in Kentucky. So all the great bushwhacking leaders, all those boys from the war, you know, they were my leaders. They didn't hardly last after the war. So I consider him a bandit and a gentleman. But depends on who you talk to on that one.
Other questions? Okay, we have some here in the front.
How did you meet Bob Ford?
How did I meet Bob Ford? I'm surprised you knew about Bob Ford. Well, but basically, I knew Charlie, and Charlie is Bob's brother. And we were putting a gang together again, and I like Charlie, because Charlie reminded me of Frank. He's very quiet, very serious young boy. But I didn't have enough people to rob this bank that I was getting ready to rob up in Platte City, and he suggested his brother Bob come with us. So I really only heard about Bob. I'm actually going to meet him pretty soon, but I didn't really know him probably until, well, you know, last couple weeks here. I've met him real soon. So he was really introduced to me by his brother Charlie, and I believed in Charlie. But you can see the rest of my gang at that time. I had a fellow named Dick Little who had just turned himself into the authorities. They said he was going to turn on me pretty soon as well. So these boys, I mean, I hope it turns out well for me, but I don't know. My mama even met him, didn't trust him. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Bob.
That's right.
We have one right here from a young man who might want to join you.
There's a young fella.
How long did it take for you to rob a bank usually?
Usually, I could be in and out of there in 20 minutes or less. See, the real reason that I got caught up in Northfield is that I was there way too long. They knew we were around. See, if you get into a place, you go in there that day, and if you're in and out in half an hour, they don't even know what happened. So the real goal is to do it in less than half an hour. Get into town, rob it, get out. That's the way to do it. Are you interested? Oh yeah, he's ready to go. I think I might have myself one. You know any good banks in the area? All right.
We have back over in the back of the tent.
I understand that you were somewhat pious. You had a piety in your religion. You were baptized and all that. And did all this cold-blooded killing ever bother you at all?
Well, I can't even see you, so I'm feeling like the Spirit's actually talking to me right now. Yes, Lord. Oh, there he is. Okay. Well, I did grow up a Baptist. The problem was is that I was never officially allowed to join the church because they knew about me being an outlaw. So even though I did believe, and I do read that Bible, you know, when I think about my piety, I always think of my mama and my daddy, my original daddy. And the thing is, I always believed in them, and I always believed that the Lord was on my side. But as far as what I did for a living, I thought that the Lord actually suggested that I do that. So it really depends on how you look at such a thing. But I never did give up my outlawry to join the church. So there were some conflicted moments about that sort of thing, but you just do what you feel is right.
You said you was around Bentonville, Arkansas?
Mm-hmm.
I live in a little town right beside Bentonville, Pea Ridge. Y'all never did hide no money up there, did you?
We didn't hide any money. we spent that money. How is that general store doing in Bentonville right now?
Did you have a cousin named Wood Height?
Oh, Wood High, yes I did. Now the strange thing is that he died quite recently. Now he was in my gang as well. He was part of my new gang. Yeah, I knew Clarence and I knew Wood. Yeah, and but strange thing is that he got shot quite recently, and I'm not sure who actually did that. And I'm looking to find out right now. But yeah, see, I had my kin join me. Anybody I could get to be in my gang. But yeah, I knew Wood Height, and you know, can you tip me off because someone just shot him.
Yeah.
Was it you? Don't say it.
Other questions? Oh, we have some here in the middle. Let's move you through here.
You said that you were church married. Have you had any children?
Oh, yes, ma'am, I do. I have Jesse James Jr. and little Mary Susan. Now, I I had 2 twin boys, but they died right in infancy. So I had 4 children, but I have 2 right now. And yeah, no, they're my pride and joy right there. And Zerilda, my Z, oh, she's the mama. She takes care of them. She's put up with me moving them all around. So, and we've had to go under the name Howard. My children don't even know I'm Jesse James. They think they're the Howards. So, you just keep that a secret now, okay?
Go right here.
How long did Bellstar stay with your gang? Very long, or just a short period?
Bellstar wasn't actually in my gang. I mean, like I said, we were childhood friends more than anything else. They had a general store down in Carthage, and we would go down there, and we were the same age. I mean, the youngers, actually, she hung out with the youngers a little bit more, and I know she's got some stories about that sort of thing. There's a lot of rumors on what happened with her and the youngest, but we were just childhood friends. We never robbed anything together. Bellstar is probably not as bad as a Jesse James, but you know, she didn't mind hanging out with us. We taught her a few things. So.
Other questions? We look across.
Do you have one more you want?
You mentioned about
How many men you tried to have to rob a train or a bank? Did you wait till you got that group of men, or would you go in with a shorter?
In the early days, Frank and I would go in and rob things with 5 or less people. You don't want too many men in your gang. You need a good five people, depending on how much crowd control you're going to need. But we liked 5 to 7 folk to come along with us. Now, in the early days, we were just trying everything out at the time. So, but you didn't want more than that. We took 8 up to Northfield because we didn't know where we were going, so we took more than we usually do. But 5 to 7, I think, would be the normal amount to rob a bank or a train.
All right, Mr. James, we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
We don't have much for back.
I was going to say, thank you.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of banks around here. I would now like to introduce to you the scholar behind the character of Jesse James, Mr. Aaron Worley. And this is Aaron's first time to bring Jesse to Arkansas. It's the first time he's been with us here in Smackover with our natural state Chautauqua. So Aaron, will you entertain a couple more questions? As a matter of fact, maybe go back to the Bob Ford thing. So.
In case you didn't know, and most people do want to know, it's how Jesse James died. And what happened is that he had taken on a few guys, Dick Little, you mentioned Wood Height, and what actually happened was that Bob Ford shot Wood Height, and this was at the very end. And because of that, Dick Little turned himself in soon after, and the whole gang was crumbling. But the only one he really trusted was Charlie Ford. So he wanted one more guy in the gang if they were going to go rob a bank. So Charlie suggested his brother Bob. So they took Bob Ford in right at the end, and he took him to go see his mama, and his mama did not trust either of the Fords, didn't like either one. They were going to go rob a bank in Platte City, but that was Jesse's plan. The plan that the Fords had is they had made a deal with the governor of Missouri to kill Jesse and collect the reward. And what happened is Jesse was up in St. Joseph's with his family, and they were living under Howard. And one morning, it was April 3rd, 1882, they're getting ready to go to Platte City that morning. And the thing is that Jesse James always carried 2 pistols on him all the time. And the Fords were very much afraid to pull a gun on him if he had his guns on him, because they didn't think they could ever get the drop on him. So on that morning, it was a hot morning, and there's rumors of that he had some malaria problems or something, but he was hot, and he removed his coat in his house. And as he did, Charlie said, well, why don't you take off, your pistol? Someone might see you. If you take off your coat, they're going to see you with your guns. And so he did, and he went up to fix a picture that was crooked in the house. And when he did that, both of the Fords put their guns. He heard a click, but he didn't even have time to turn around, and Bob Ford shot him in the back of the head. It killed him instantly. Yeah, it is.
All right. What about other questions now that we've talked about that dirty
Fair
coward?
game, anything.
That dirty coward, Bob
Yeah,
Ford.
that dirty coward that shot Mr. Howard.
Let's see, okay. We have one right over here, Aaron.
What happened to his family line? Are there still Howard Jameses out there?
Well, I know as far as both of his children had children, so he had grandchildren. So I assume that there's a Jesse James line. The most interesting thing is Jesse James Jr. was very much haunted because he never knew his dad as Jesse James. So it kind of confused him. And when they actually started making movies in I believe it was the 1920s, Jesse James Jr. starred as Jesse James. And he eventually became a lawyer, so he kind of went the other way. You go from outlaw to lawyer in one generation. Yeah, the Jesse James line continued on after he did, yeah. Because both of his children had children. So
I was just going to say the Earps did that, and it wasn't the next generation. Mm-hmm. It was just the next day. Other questions? Okay.
Do you know where Jesse James is buried?
That's an interesting point as well, because he's been dug up twice. He was originally buried on the family farm, and there were so many questions, because after his death, it was kind of like Elvis. People kept popping up saying, I'm Jesse James, I'm Jesse James. So they dug him up to prove that someone was buried on the farm. And eventually, they moved him to actual gravesite in Kearney. And in the 1990s, they dug him up again to prove that that was Jesse James, and they did DNA tests and proved that, yes, he was actually, what actually everyone quoted, the newspaper said that's what actually happened. So there were imposters afterwards, but when they were tested and quizzed by Jesse James' family, they didn't know the right answers. So yeah. So he's up in Missouri, and actually you can go up and you can visit the family farm, and you can visit the house that he got shot in up there. So if you want to do some little traveling to look up Jesse James stuff, it's up there in northwest Missouri there.
The back of the tent?
I'll move over here.
I can see you.
You didn't mention much about the reason that your Missourians supported you in your activities, even though they were somewhat shady. Could you mention one of the possibilities of their supporting you? The general, I think it was Thomas Ewing, issued an order number 11.
Oh yes.
That had a very, well, you take it from there.
Okay. Well, I mentioned General Order Number 10 because that's what was arresting all the Southern sympathizers. But Thomas Ewing actually went a step further than that with General Order Number 11, which was to evacuate everything within 20 miles of the Missouri-Kansas border. All families, because there were so many Southern sympathizers there. And what ended up happening is that, they did kick people off their lands, including the Samuels family. And most of those families went down south after that. His family went up to Rulo, Nebraska, which is just on the other side of the river. So it's sort of like, we're leaving, but we're coming right back, kind of thing. But what that ended up being called is the burnt district, because when those families left, they set all those houses on fire, and it was just this terrible, thing. And there was an artist that was named Caleb Bingham, and he was very upset about Thomas Ewing, and he said that someday he would get even with him. And Thomas Ewing went up to, I believe it was Ohio, and tried to run for office up there. And Caleb Bingham painted a picture of, which was called the Burnt District, and it was a picture of people being kicked out of their homes and houses on fire and everything. And he made that painting, made prints, and gave them to people in Ohio. And Thomas Ewing lost the election up there because of what he did with General Order Number 11 during the war. So that one, Jesse James still stung a lot of people even after his death, and Thomas Ewan was one of them. So there was a lot of atrocities in the war, and it came back on a lot of people there.
Other questions? All right, we have one back over there on that side. You mentioned that he took the Fords to meet his mother.
Mhm.
Was she encouraging him in the bank robberies, vetting his gang members?
She liked, absolutely. She loved the attention. Like, she was a very outgoing woman. So she saw it the way that Jesse did, which is to go against, the United States of America, it was their home, but the government was not their government. So this is why a lot of people call Jesse James America's first terrorist, because that's what he did. This was the result of the Civil War, is that some people just were not going to accept that, that we were supposed to assimilate. And his mother was very fine, because she got paid. She lived a good life, and actually, even after she lost her arm, the railroad company that brought in the men to attack her home gave her free passage for the rest of her life, just so Jesse James wouldn't rob their train, for vengeance after that. So, she did get a lot of perks, and she lived into her 90s, and after his death, they had tours of the house, even, so they sold off, anything that might have been his gun. There's things floating around still today. You can still buy Jesse James guns on the internet. It can be done. Are they genuine? I don't know, but...
Other questions?
What got you interested in portraying Jesse James? Did you like him as reading them stories as a kid?
No, actually. The funny thing is, my dad is a history professor, and he lives in the Kansas City area, and he does Chautauquas. And he's got about 30 characters, I think. I don't know, it's too many to count. But when he first asked me to do it, which was about 7 years ago, Jesse James died when he was 34. And I was about 34 at the time. He's like, well, and I'm an actor as well. And we kind of actually started acting at the same time. It's kind of strange. He started, a few decades after I did. But, so I was doing theater acting. And he said, well, why don't you try doing Jesse James? And I started reading about him. And he has such a fascinating story. Just because you do get that Civil War time and after, and you get the Wild West. And so the story itself intrigued me very much, and my dad is actually right over there. He's the one with the hat on there. So it's his fault. And I appreciate it. So,
Blame accepted.
exactly.
All right. Well, Aaron, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for doing this. It's very special that you guys do the Chautauquas and that you come out.